It was June 30th, 2005, in Richmond, North Yorkshire. A 19 years old Jenny left her house, and that was the last time anyone ever saw her alive. Jenny wasn't a troubled teenager. She worked part time at a supermarket, played guitar in a local club, and was known for her warmth and easy laughter. Her parents described her as gentle but confident, a girl who never went anywhere without telling someone. When she did not return home the next day, her family assumed that she had stayed longer with her friends. By the 4th of July, their unease turned into fear. There were no calls, no texts, no words from Jenny. Her small white Rover 214i was soon discovered parked outside the Holy Hill Inn. The doors were locked, windows intact, and keys gone. Inside, nothing looked out of place, as if she would park, stepped out for a moment, and simply vanished into thin air. Police initially treated this as a missing case. Maybe someone had gone camping. She loved outdoor. Maybe she needed space. In the small town, people disappear for days, sometimes for weeks. Then they drift back quietly. But this time, Jenny wasn't coming back. As police retracted the last moments, they found no confirmed sighting after that Thursday evening. Her phone was silent, her bank account untouched. There was no witness, no CCTV, hence no trace. It felt like the earth had swallowed her whole. In the days that followed, search parties searched the surrounding countrysides, fields, river banks, all the parts that leading into Yorkshire dales. Dozens of volunteers joined in, calling her name through the mist. Each night, they came back empty-handed. For Jenny's parents, the silence became unbearable. A silence that soon turned into something darker, a growing suspicion that someone in the close community knew more than they were saying. While search teams combed through woods and fields, police quietly turned their attention to one man, a man that kept surfacing again and again. And he is David Hodgson. David wasn't a stranger. He was a 45 years old, a local handyman, a familiar face in Richmond pubs and small gigs. And he knew Jenny over a decade. In the beginning, it seemed innocent, a shared interest in music. He played guitar, so did she. They sometimes practiced together, performed at the same pubs, exchanged small town smiles that meant nothing more than friendship. But over the time, that friendship began to change, not for Jenny, but for David. Behind the quiet charm of the small town musician was a man leading two lives, one ordinary and polite, on the other side, obsession and controlling. He became possessive, protective, and increasingly volatile when Jenny pulled away. Police later learned that while Jenny saw him as an old friend, David has convinced himself it was something much more deeper, that is, something romantic. And when she began seeing his younger brother Robert, everything inside David began to unravel. In the few weeks before Jenny disappeared, David's behavior grew unprecedented. He followed her car, turned up uninvited at her workplace, and even began spreading rumors about her relationship with Robert. Friends described him as jealous and fixated, like a man slowly losing his grip on reality. But outwardly, David hid it well. To neighbors, he was a friend and helpful. To co-workers, he was polite and unassuming. He blended perfectly into the quiet routines of Richmond life, a mask that fooled nearly everyone. When Jenny went missing, David's reaction was oddly calm. He did not join the search team. He did not contact her parents. He avoided police questions and kept his answers vague, casual, and dismissive, as if her disappearance was barely worth mentioning. Detectives found that strange, because usually when someone you know vanishes, especially someone you're so close, you show concern, panic, and fear, isn't it? David showed none of it. Instead, he carried one as if life hadn't changed at all. But in the shadows, police would later discover something far more disturbing. a secret hideout, a web of lies, and a plan to cover his tracks long before anyone even realized Jenny had gone. And next, when the search widens, the investigation began to reveal traces of a dissected and the one missing person case to look like something far more darker. For the first few days, police still believed Jenny would turn up because young people go missing, they drift, but they do return, isn't it? As each day passed and there was no sign of her, that fragile hope had begun to fade. The North Yorkshire police launched one of the largest local search in the recent history. Volunteers, soldiers from nearby Catterick Garrison, and sniffer dogs combed the farmlands, reservoir, whatever they could. Helicopters scanned the dense greenery around the Yorkshire Dells, while officers knocked on every door within a 10-mile radius. Everywhere they looked, there was nothing. There was no footprints, no discarded belongings, no hint that Jenny had ever left Richmond on her own. Then a small fragment of information began to surface. But that information didn't make any sense. Witness recalled seeing a man resembling David near Jenny's car the night she had been disappeared. Another local said they had been seeing him driving late into the night, heading towards the countryside. Police began to wonder if this wasn't a case of a missing teenager, but something much, much more worse. They started tracing every person in Jenny's social circles, from friends to co-workers and to old school. Every trial circled back to one man, and that is David. When police interviewed David formally, his calm was something police couldn't trust. He said he hadn't seen Jenny for days, that she often went on to adventures, camping, or visiting friends. He told police not to worry, but police did worry because David's timeline didn't add up. He said he had been home that night, yet his car's mileage showed extra distance, received from unusual fuel purchases, and neighbors reported hearing his vehicle leave late and return before dawn. But by the end of July 2005, the investigation shifted from a missing person to a suspected murder. Police firmly started to believe David had lured her somewhere, a place Jenny trusted, and that she never came back. But without a body, the case was entirely built on logic, timing, and instinct. That's when the smallest clue, a flicker of light from a mobile signal, could change everything. A few days after Jenny's disappearance, her family received a text. It was way too short and casual. In the message, she said she was fine. She said she had gone for camping for a few days, needed some time alone, and would be back soon. When this kind of message is seen, her parents felt a momentary relief, believing that at least she was alive. But something about the text did not feel right. Jenny was too close to her family. Whenever she texted, her words carried a certain rhythm, a style, even little spelling quirks that made her sound like her. But this message was different. It was robotic, as if someone was imitating her. Over the next few days, more messages arrived, each one stranger than the last. She claimed to be moving around North England, places like Clasey and Jetsburg. She said she was fine, that people should not worry. But police started to wonder if she was really alive. Why wasn't she calling? Why weren't her friends hearing from her directly? And why did this message suddenly sound like they were written by someone twice her age? When police pulled Jenny's phone records, a disturbing pattern appeared. Every single text had been sent after the time she was last seen, and every one of them was sent from areas hundreds of miles away from Richmond. Now remember, this was 2007. Mobile data was limited, GPS tracking was primitive, but phone towers still left traces. The phone that sent those messages wasn't wandering freely throughout the countryside. It was being carried deliberately by someone who wanted to make it look like Jenny, and Jenny was still alive. Police began digging into suspected movements. David's name resurfaced again. This time, he had rented a car twice during the 2 weeks following Jenny's disappearance. Both the times, the mileage on the rented car matched almost exactly the distance between Richmond and the towns from where those Jenny's text has been sent. The puzzle was finally connecting itself. Every message was smokescreen sent to buy time, to mislead police, to stage a false trial of a girl. In reality, she might already had been gone. Forensic team was brought in, and those experts who studied the way people write and text, they compared Jenny's genuine message with the later ones. And the conclusion was simply these messages weren't written by her. The words did not sound like Jenny, they sounded like David pretending to be Jenny. And the more detectives studied him, the clearer the motive became. A jealous older man desperate to cover his track by creating a digital ghost. When the police reached a dead end with Jenny's phone trial, they went back to something physical: the woods. Locals had mentioned that David often disappeared for hours, carrying tools, camping gear, and sometimes a guitar. He called it escape. Police called it a hiding place. The area was called Sandeck Plantation, a patch of forest just outside Richmond, which is quite an absolute remote. The kind of place where you could scream and no one would hear. In August 2005, two officers followed a narrow drift track leading deep into those woods. What they found there would become the turning point in the case. At the center of the tree stood a small wooden hut, hand-built from scraped timber and metal, and inside a single chair, a mattress, a battery lamp, and the unmissable remnants of someone's private world. As forensic team swept the room, they noticed something odd on the mattress. Faint reddish stain that looked too dark to be an old paint. On a dusty shelf, a cassette player, a teddy bear, and a nightdress. Each object tagged, photographed, and sealed. When Jenny's parents were later shown those photos, her mother broke down immediately and said they were Jenny's. The DNA test confirmed the family already feared. The nightdress had Jenny Nicholl's DNA, but more importantly, forensic from the hut matched the samples taken from David's home. He would be there often. This was no random cabin in the woods. This was his perfect hideout, the place where he spent time alone, and possibly where Jenny took her last breath. And the police pieced the case together in a sequence. Jenny trusted David enough to meet him. He lured her into the woods under the pretext of camping and playing music. And then something went wrong: an argument, a rejection, and a jealousy. Despite months of searching, no body was ever found. David never confessed, but the hut told its own story, one of possession, secrecy, and control. For police, it was a confirmation they needed. Jenny hadn't simply walked away. She had been taken by the very man who claimed to take care of her. To understand what happened to Jenny, detectives had to step into the fractured mind of David, a man who mistook attention for affection and friendship for ownership. On the surface, David was ordinary. He mended fences, played in local bands, chatted to neighbors about weather. But beneath that quiet, familiar face was a mind quietly rewiring itself around one idea, and that is Jenny. For him, Jenny wasn't a friend anymore. She was a fixation, a symbol of youth, energy, and everything his own life had long outgrown. When she had been seeing with his brother Robert, That obsession had turned into envy. David felt betrayed, not by her choice, but by the reality that he could never control her. People describe David as possessive, but that word does not capture the depth of it. He did not just wanted her attention, he wanted her existence to revolve around him. Later, police found pages of notes and old photographs in his home, small reminders that had been watching her for months. He learned her routines, her friends, her favorite places to play guitar. Control became his language of love. And when Jenny tried to distance herself, that control began slipping away. Every unanswered call, every ignored text fed his anger. He could not bear the idea of living freely, especially with his own brother. So when she vanished, police saw a pattern familiar to forensic psychologists say narcissistic entitlement. People like David believed they had been wronged by the world, that taking someone's life somehow restores balance. Even after the murder, that obsession did not stop, it merely evolved. It started living inside the illusion he had created, sending messages from phone, constructing a fantasy where she still existed because if she was alive in those texts, then he hadn't truly lost her. It's a chilling contradiction. The same obsession that drove him to destroy her was the one that wouldn't let go of her. For police, understanding the mindset gave them clarity. This wasn't a random act, it was absolutely premeditated control disguised as love. And in the quiet corner of Richmond, a mask of normality had hidden one of the darkest hearts they had ever seen. By early 2008, after nearly 3 years of unanswered questions, police finally had enough evidence to bring David to court. In the court, the prosecutions built the case piece by piece, like a puzzle made of shadows. But there was no body, no weapon, and no confession. But there were traces, enough to outline the truth. The text he has sent from Jenny's phone, the car hire mileage that monitored the strange message location, the forest hut with the night dress and the teddy bear, the DNA, and the jealousy that buried beneath every lie he told. Prosecutors argued that David had planned everything right down to using a phone to fabricate lie after death. It was a story of control wrapped in the appearance of chaos. And on 19th of February 2008, David was found guilty of murder and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 18 years behind the bar. For Jenny's parents, this was a justice but not a peace, because justice without a body is like a story without an ending. Till today, her remains have never been found. Her family still visits the edge of Sandesk, leaving flowers near the path that lead into the trees. They say they can't rest until she does. Jenny's story reminds us that monsters don't always hide in dark. And that's it for today. I'm Sai from SPK Reports, unmasking crime one story at a time.